Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Friday morning. We, as a panel, we all greet you in the name of the Lord. And we're so excited that we've got so many of us back on track today. And especially Dr. Alaine. She's back with us today temporarily, but we're so glad to have her back. And our show, again, I want to reiterate that we are gospel centered. We're taking the verse in 2 Peter 3:11, where Peter said, since everything will be destroyed in this way, what kind of people ought you to be? And I think that's a good question for us today. What kind of people, in the midst of what's going on, the zeitgeist, everything that's going on in the world today, what type of people ought we to be as believers? And I'm not holding anybody to that, but that's just a verse that I was reading this morning. At least it spoke to me. And, we have to examine ourselves on a daily basis, almost moment by moment. But anyhow, I'm going to turn it over to Dennis this morning and let him give us some of the particulars, details, and then we're going to open it up for just a general, sanctified, intelligent conversation amongst erudites. Dennis?
Thank you, Van. That was an interesting introduction. And I guess our discussion, I hope, is always sanctified. So we'll see how things go with that. But welcome to Straight Talk Live. We're glad to have you with us this morning, live on Facebook. And those of you who watch us later on YouTube and then on our podcast on anchor.fm/talk straight. It's good to have most of our panel back with us, and we're looking forward to the show today. Van just got back from Baltimore from playing up there, I guess, and getting himself together with a new assignment. And so we're happy to hear about how things went up there. I got a chance to meet with him. And in fact, I picked him up at the airport and we spent a little time together. And he went to do his assignment at Loyola. And so we congratulate him on his new assignment in Baltimore, going back and forth. I asked him, was he going to move up there? And he didn't give me an answer, but we think he's going to be traveling back and forth and doing some things. So we thank God for that. And so we're just going to rib him this morning along with everything else, and see where he is. And
Frozen, or is it just Dennis?
As we're going. Okay, Van, I'll turn it back to you. Van?
Man is never speechless. So
I think he's
this has got to be technology.
Yeah, he must have frozen on us. Well, we'll jump in until Van jumps back in.
But at least outside of my house.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, I never left. But
you were cutting out. We lost you.
There's a storm brewing outside my house.
Oh, okay.
It's starting to rain here in Jacksonville, and so I don't know what's going on with that weather for this.
It's all that
internet.
Confusion down in Florida.
But anyhow, yeah, there's confusion here. Anyhow, it's good to be back, and just to highlight, I just wanted to say about my trip to Baltimore, to Loyola. It was a great anniversary celebration of a 1 year at the Carson Institute. I met some very great people, loving people. They assigned me my own office, and everybody was so accommodating. I don't know if it's a hospitality they extend just to new people, and then once you've been there a week, they'll settle in. But it was really a great reception. I got to meet Baltimore's greatest lawyer. He's like the what's the gentleman that Johnny Cochran? He's the Johnny Cochran of Baltimore. He was he's a senior fellow too, and he was there. And of course, everybody knew him. And but I had a great time there. I met a scholar, Arthur Sutherland, PhD. He went to Yale. He went to Princeton. He studied in Germany, and he's about 6'6". And if you see a picture of us, you'll see that I barely reach his shoulders, barely. And so we visited a couple of libraries, and that's what scholars like to do, visit libraries. And that was wonderful. And we went out for a great dinner, and we're planning some big things. I'm going back in February, by the way, to speak in chapel and to give lectures in some of the classes. But the students are great. people is great. And Dr. K, Carson Whitehead, she's the director and president of Carson Institute. Fantastic. He has a radio show in Baltimore, and I got on that 2 days ago. I was on the radio show with her and out of Morgan State, and just a great time together. But I'm most excited to see all these lovely faces on the panel today. And so I'm going to just open it up. And I want to say too, Rob just got back from Oxford. So maybe you could share with us a little bit of how that trip was, Rob.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. But should I defer to Alaine? I know your time is sometimes short with us. No.
She's shaking her head no.
Okay. Anyone else need to take time because of schedule issues?
Does that mean you're going to take up the rest of the show, Rob? Is that why you're
well, just give me a chance, because you know what? Look, there's 800 years of history to talk about here with Oxford, so it could take a millennium or two. But no, very quickly, I'll just tell you, like your trip to Loyola, this was a very fruitful, wonderful time. One thing I like to kind of frame up for people is sometimes, we who are far from Oxford and know only of its kind of lore, imagine, you come upon this medieval dome, kind of a palatial university. That's not what Oxford is. There is no Oxford University building per se. There are 39 smallish colleges that are all linked together. It was described to me as a federal system. These are autonomous colleges that function independently. They all have their own histories, customs, mores, specialties, faculty. I was surprised to find that there's no centralized processing for applicants. There's what do we call that? What do we call the intake at a university? It's
enrollment.
Enrollment. Thank you. There's no real central enrollment office or system. Each college makes its own decisions, has its own process for that to take place. The way they cooperate is if they entertain an applicant and they decide this applicant would be better placed at a different college, they will refer to another college. But, these are smallish entities. They range from 200 to 2,000 students, so you don't get the mega university experience that you have, for example, in many state universities here in the United States, where you might have 15,000, 25,000, 45,000 students in one institution. That's not how it's done. And even the instruction is very intimate. It's nearly one-on-one. I mean, you have tutelage, you have tutors at Oxford who sit with a student, a scholar, by the way, they prefer the term, one-on-one or in a small colloquy, maybe a seminar style, 3, 5, 10 sitting around a table. And this is an ancient way of instruction. The history of Oxford goes back to the monasteries. And there were monasteries at Oxford going back 1,000 years. And the colleges grew out of those monasteries. So if you can imagine the kind of tutelage, the kind of mentorship that went on in medieval times, where you had a master and his protege, that's still the sort of system that exists there. So it really is a very rich environment in terms of learning more than just head knowledge. It's more than academics. There's a real feeling of learning to emulate your senior. There's a lot of, there's certainly younger faculty there, but a lot of doyens and let me get my French right, doyens, male and female faculty of many years, just think C.S. Lewis taught there. So, you get that kind of feeling about who's there doing the instructing and the mentorship. So it's unique. Oxford is a unique institution in the world. I haven't been to Cambridge. I was invited to go to Cambridge. In fact, the first invitation that came was from Cambridge, the rival of the chair of the clergy commission for our Dietrich Bonhoeffer Institute, Jeffrey Hoare, is a Cambridge man. And I made the faux pas one day. I told him, I just really love Oxford. I've been there 5 times. And he said, well, Oxford's a fine place to go if you can't get into Cambridge. Anyway, you get the rivalry there between those two venerable institutions. So I imagine it's similar at Cambridge, but they're even distinct, and the Cambridgeites, will tell you that, and so will the Oxfordites. So, but the best part of my experience was linking up with Van, one of your senior fellows of the Dietrich Bonhoeffer Institute, Dr. Tobias Kramer, who is German by birth and upbringing British and French by education, has strong ties here in the United States. I hope maybe Tobias can join us sometime on Straight Talk. He certainly makes for a very interesting interlocutor. And here's I just described to you this scholar and expert on the rise of religious nationalisms all over Europe and North America. He's published on that. He lectures on it routinely. He's associated here with the Berkeley Center for Religion in the Public Sphere at Georgetown University, and comes frequently. And oh, by the way, did I tell you, he's 29 years old? Okay, so what I just told you is this is one brilliant guy, young man, and that's what makes him so much like Bonhoeffer to me.
Yeah.
People forget that Bonhoeffer, Dietrich, the inimitable Dietrich Bonhoeffer, did most of his work between ages 23 and 39, and was martyred by the Nazis at age 39, never even made it into his 40s. So, when I'm with Tobias, he reminds me of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and he even has a connection because his great grandfather was one of the founders of the Confessing Church in Germany, was a correspondence partner with Bonhoeffer. They wrote, I don't think they ever met, but they wrote to one another extensively. So, being with Tobias was very meaningful and gives us a very strong connection to this unique and venerable institution. And Van, you and I have been cooking up a plan to get our senior fellows connected with the research programs offered through Oxford. It looks like that's well underway. And can I just wrap it up with this? I promise, Dennis, this is it. This is the end of the sermon, and you know what that means. Uh-oh. In closing, I say, for me, the high point was preaching evensong, the evening service out of the Book of Common Prayer, 1662, by the way. That's what Oxford is like.
Uh-huh.
1662 is the modern service at Oxford. And it was chanted. It was entirely chanted, that service. And I preached in, a monastic chapel, if you can imagine that. Oh, there you go. There you go. I got the same one. I've got the same one right down here. I got the same one. That's the Book of Common Prayer. And by the way, low church folk, our evangelical Pentecostal fellows, take a serious look at the Book of Common Prayer. You'll find more scripture in a Book of Common Prayer service than you will in most of our freewheeling, extemporaneous, ad hoc low church services. Van, I know your history. You were one of the first to bring the Book of Common Prayer into the Pentecostal world many, many years ago. Many, many, many years ago. I'm dating you. But it's a beautiful format for worship and prayer and scripture reading and so forth. And that's what happened. And in these monastic chapels, you're not facing people sitting theater style in pews. They are in what's called choir, which means they are facing each other and you're in the center. And, you hear the echoes and you understand sacred space in a way we don't in our modern auditorium style sanctuaries. These are kind of replications of the imagination of the heavenlies. And it was just really beautiful, very well received. My jokes did not go over in a British setting. They went flat. Cheryl said, nobody laughed at your jokes. I said, no, American pulpit humor doesn't translate into a 1662 Book of Common Prayer medieval service in Britain. But anyway, everything else went well except my jokes. So I guess that doesn't get much credit. So that's my story from Oxford. But Van, we are on our way to Oxford for the summer research opportunities, I have no doubt.
Great.
Rob,
great.
before you get through, Lois had put in the chat, I don't know if you saw it, but we just wanted to know, why were you there in the beginning?
That's what you just...
Yeah, well, I was invited originally to be part of a panel on religion and violence, which I did at the historic University Church of St. Mary the Virgin, which, by the way, is where Thomas Cranmer was condemned as a heretic.
Right.
And slated to be burned at the stake. I was literally sitting where he was condemned. Literally, my chair was on the platform where he was condemned. It's a little creepy, but it's kind of a martyr's church for Protestants. And John Wesley, the progenitor of modern Western evangelicalism, preached in that pulpit. So it was quite the setting, but that was part of something called the International Oxford Science and Ideas Festival. So I did that panel, 3 of us, and then preached, and then did the conferral ceremony for Tobias Kramer's senior fellowship. And a few other things. Visited the Bonhoeffer Church, where Dietrich Bonhoeffer was pastor in Sydenham section of London. And can I just say this? Here we go. Here's the trouble, Dennis. Uh-oh, you're going to regret giving me another minute. And then I got to call it quits here. But I was able to see for the first time the pastoral diary for Bonhoeffer when he was pastor of that congregation, including his weddings, baptisms, funerals. And you don't really see that side of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. We hear about him as the great moral philosopher, theologian, Nazi resistor, martyr. but we don't see him just in an ordinary, everyday pastoral context. And here were his notes. And I spoke to one woman, 90 years old, who said, Pastor Bonhoeffer was very smart, but he was a terrible pastor. Terrible. He was too smart. His sermons were always over everybody's head. So, gives you a realistic appreciation for things. That's it. I'm done. I'm out of the pulpit.
Well, thank you for that update, Rob, very much so. And before I comment on Martin Luther, equating it with Bonhoeffer, I'm going to ask if Alaine wants to jump in and tell us what has been happening with you, my sister.
Oh my goodness, there's a lot going on. So my husband is an active duty Army chaplain, and we were not initially scheduled to move until the summer of 2022, and we were very surprised to find out that we're actually moving pretty much now. So we have packers and movers come into our house in about a week and a half, and they're going to pack everything up, and we are moving from Washington State to New Jersey, so much closer to some of you, which is exciting. So we're in the midst of doing that. Still doing a full load of teaching and training full load of teaching, and then also training in spiritual direction, and just being wife and mom and taking it moment by moment in this season. So yeah, that's what's going on with me and with my family.
Yeah. Well, may I ask, Alaine, what are some of the main subjects you're teaching right now?
Oh, that's a good question. And I have my notebooks right here, so this is helpful.
Okay.
So a form of biblical interpretation, but it's more theological in its approach. And I've had 2 sections of that this semester. Systematic theology, a couple of different forms of that. Old Testament, New Testament, and church history.
Oh, great.
So a little bit of everything.
Great. Well, I wish I could sit in on some of your classes, Alaine. That would be wonderful.
They're fun classes and a lot of fun students.
I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be glad that may the Lord give you a peaceful transition, and we will be so glad to have you on the East Coast with us.
Yeah, it'll be good. It'll be different. We have never lived in that part of the country. The furthest east I've lived is in North Carolina when my husband was stationed there. So this is our first time for all of us, all 3 of us, living in that part of the country. So we're excited to be part of a different culture and learn new things.
Where exactly in Jersey, Alaine?
Fort Dix. So it's about 45 minutes east of Philly, about an hour and a half south of New York City.
Yeah.
So,
wow. That's very close.
Very
we
close.
get there quite a bit. So maybe we can do a meetup sometime.
Oh, I would love that.
Your
I would love
husband,
that.
the chaplain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, how about Lois? How are you doing?
Well, I was just sitting here thinking my involvements lately have been a lot more of the earth than you lofty folks here. I have, I'm sitting listening about Oxford and chaplaincy and fellowships and all of these things and courses. And right now I'm in a season that seems to be sort of beginning of life and end of life kinds of things. Beginning of life in terms of welcoming refugees to Springfield, and they're starting their life here. We are expecting 300 refugees this year, 100 of whom soon will be Afghan refugees here. So we've been very involved in establishing community sponsorship groups. So we're working through the official resettlement agency here, the International Institute of Southwest Missouri. And that institute is, has put out to the community that if you want to form a community sponsorship group to be a welcoming group for the new refugees, so you can do that. And we've been going through this whole process. So our church, Evangel Temple, has formed a group, and I'm leading that group. And just this week, I did a home staging where you go to the new apartment, and in preparation for the person coming that evening or that next morning, and you set up the apartment with all kinds of kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, living room kinds of stuff. And so we're involved in that right now. In terms of end of life. But then personally, I've been dealing with a lot of different situations that are dealing with end of life, both for the last 6 months, helping a friend go through a lot of, health and decision-making kinds of things in her life. And then with my mom, and then with my another family member who just recently, even though he's very young, he's going into assisted living and memory care. So this is kind of a different season for me. I'm not, doing these lofty academic things, though I am, doing my editing and involved in, dissertations or books or things like that. But it seems to be a season where just kind of a lot of real life is going on here. And, but that's been, that's been a real learning experience for me as well. Even my husband and I, we're facing different, kinds of health issues or health realities. And I'm sure, some of you have experienced that as well, where, we're having to make some decisions about certain things and possibly relocating, downsizing here in Springfield and staying here, but, making a change. So that's kind of where I'm at. And even though I say that, I'm still, this afternoon, I have another Zoom call with the Pentecostal Justice Coalition. We're working on a manifesto for racial justice. And so we've got all these things going on, but, a lot of real life is happening in the meantime. And so that's kind of where I've been at.
Yes. Well, from the theoretical to the practical, Lois.
Yeah.
Somebody has to keep their feet on the ground while some people's heads are in the clouds.
Yeah, I'm dealing with, power of attorney and funeral arrangements and, all this kind of, it's amazing. It really is a whole world of that you don't really get into until you have to, until you're there. Right. So, but I'm glad because it's really needed. And, the older our society gets, the more all of us are going to be involved and touched by it in one way or another.
Yeah. Well, that includes me. Dennis is actually the oldest on the show today, but I'm right behind him.
Okay.
He's got a few years, but even this afternoon, I've got a 1:00 Zoom with Gordon Conwell to discuss their new D-Min program here in Jacksonville. And but then after that, I got to do some very practical things here around the house. So Ellen keeps me busy on their way. Yeah. But Dennis, you got anything you want to jump in? I'm so glad, by the way. Dennis really did a great job when I landed in Baltimore, and I hadn't flown in over a year. I mean, it'd been a year and a half since I traveled. And I flew into Baltimore, landed there on Southwest. And lo and behold, who's waiting for me? Dennis gives me a call, picks me up, takes me out to dinner, then back to my hotel. And I just like to say, thank you, my dear brother. And how is your brother doing in this situation as well?
Thank you, Van. My brother's doing well. I was in Baltimore too. Baltimore is my hometown, by the way. So I like coming up there. And I was up there for a conference I had to be at, as well as to see my brother who's been going through some health challenges. And the Lord has blessed him through the cancer he had in his throat. It's through prayer and some treatments he's had, he's completely in remission from his cancer. So that's good. My brother is about 2 years younger than me. And just going up and being with him and sort of sharing was very interesting. My younger brother was there with us. He's the middle brother. I'm the oldest and he's the middle brother. My youngest brother and I have been kind of going up and just trying to help his wife and him navigate through all the situation with all those things. But in the meantime, I was at several conferences, which were very enlightening too. And then to be able to take the time in my schedule to go and pick up Van because I knew he was coming in. And so I went and picked him up, took him out to dinner. And so we spent a little quality time together, and then get him over to where he had to go was interesting. I've got a lot going on in terms of work with over the new headquarters here in Raleigh for my ministry. And then there's a lot going on around the country and overseas with what we're doing in terms of the teaching. I'm beginning a new end time series next month. And so I'm excited about that. And I've got a series coming up on Alaine on the book of Revelation for the beginning of the year. So that's going to be interesting. And so we're doing some things in terms of that. So thank you, Van.
Man, that is absolutely great. You know, one of the things I didn't bring up about Loyola was the fact that Georgetown and Loyola, being a Jesuit order, the wonderful significance to the Carson Institute there is that they acknowledge, the university acknowledges their participation within slavery in America. And then the president, who is taking over here in January 1st, I met with him, and the university has made a very proactive move of setting up the Carson Institute, because they're involving their students and their professors and priests, all engaged in how do we advance the unity between the races in light of our past, and let's make up. So they're learning from their past. And I find so many people that don't want to talk about our past, especially in this country. The university is saying, no, we're embarrassed about what happened. We regret what happened, but how do we rectify? What can we do to improve and participate in the advancement of unity within the races in this country? And so I was walking on a campus, predominantly white, and the president is white, but at the same time, their heart went out to saying, we want to rectify. So they allow this Black woman, Carson, Dr. K, they've given her the ball and told her to run with it. And they're standing behind her and pushing her. And well, she doesn't need much pushing, because the woman has a lot of energy. And they're pushing her on. And it's nice to see people who still love each other, respect each other, but are dealing with the issue at the same time. Instead, they're not falling out with each other. There was no arguments, but there was good, godly, gracious dialogue amongst intellectuals. I mean, they are hitting it head on, and in such a way that we went out to lunch and everything, went out to dinner. We had a good time talking about real issues. And I just love to see that kind of dialogue amongst believers, Black, white, male, female, all talking about the same issue, how we can advance the cause and turn this nation around. And I had something by Langston Hughes, the poet, the Black poet. They were talking about, even when you talk about let America be America again. If you ever get to read Langston Hughes's poem on that, like a couple phrases I thought were real interesting. He said, and I'm just quoting excerpts from the poem, but he says, to build a homeland of the free. Who said the free? Not me, surely not me. The millions on relief today, the millions shot down when we strike, the millions who have nothing for our pay, for all the dreams we've dreamed, all the songs we've sung, all the hopes we've held, all the flags we've hung, the millions who have nothing for our pay except the dream that almost dead today. Let America be America again. Let them never yet, has never yet, and let it must be the land where every man is free. And then the closing thought I share with you, he says, oh yes, I say it plain, America never was America to me. And yet I swear this oath, America will be. And I'll tell you, that just so struck me that I feel so bad as a Black man who loves the Lord, been a Christian, have so many in this country that I have had such a paradoxical relationship with. I mean, so many great things have happened for me in this country. At the same time, it's like, the best of times, the worst of times. You can go right from a beautiful scenario and turn and go in another direction in the same setting, and something tragic is taking place. So it's that paradoxical relationship in America. And in America right now, in the politics, as all of you know, with critical race theory, they're trying to cancel that. And I believe it was Orson Welles who says that, if you want to get rid of a people, just take their history away from them. Don't let them understand their own history, and you wipe them out. And I was laying in my bed last night, and I know most of you don't have this thought, but I was laying in my bed. I said, you know what? I said, I wonder what my name really is. What would my name have been had I been left and not passed through stages where all of a sudden I've inherited a name given to my forefathers by slave masters? Van Gayton? I mean, that's a Dutch Reformed name. That is not where I come from, And yet I say to myself, that's why Malcolm X changed his name to Malcolm X, because he's like, no, I'm not accepting somebody else's name. Whoever gets to name you, I mean, Adam named all the animals. Whoever gets to name you has power over you. And I am living to this moment, this day, with the best of times, but at the same time, somebody else gave me my name. And I find that mind-blowing from day to day. And that's how you live with the past, even in the present. Rob, what do you think?
Well, first of all, over the many years, what are we doing? 40 plus years now, Van, you and I?
Yes.
Knowing each other, doing stuff together, ministering together, traveling the world together. And I treasure that. The older I get, the more that means to me, all those years spent with a brother, a friend. But now after these 40 years, I realize we have something else in common. I don't know what my original name was, the family name, that is, the paternal side, because somewhere while fleeing from persecution in Russia, the family adopted this Dutch name, Schenck, or Schenck, spelt with the two C's. When you go to Europe, when I go to Europe, everybody says you have a German name, but you put two C's in it. Well, that's the Dutch version of the German name.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know where that name came from. It certainly wasn't the original family name. And my paternal grandfather burned all the family papers because he was afraid that anti-Jewish forces in the United States would gain ascendancy and that the family would be sent back to the motherland and suffer again. So he said, well, if they don't know where we came from, they can't send us back to it. Mm-hmm. So he burned everything. And so I don't know, our original name. This name dates to the late 19th century sometime, but before that, we have no idea. So I have just a little of that existential feel. However, ours was a voluntary change. Mm-hmm. Your family history was quite the opposite.
Yes.
That name was forced on you. For us, it was a voluntary act of salvation of sorts. I mean, it was to save the family, and it was voluntary. So that has to be explored too. There's a similarity between our experiences, but a vast difference too.
Yes.
It's really something to contemplate.
Yes. Lois, your comments?
I'm just thinking there's, such a survival theme going on here right now, whether it's, the things I'm dealing with people at the end of life trying to survive, physical things and limitations and questions about, who they are even as a person when their memory is going, to survival of a people that's enslaved, to survival of Jewish people fleeing pogroms, and enslaved, to survival. I'm hearing an echo.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah.
That was so important, Lois. It had to be said
I
twice.
guess so. I guess so. You know, and I, I'm just thankful for, you're talking about this liturgy, Rob, the richness of Scripture and the presence of the Spirit and the love of Christ and the comfort of the body. We have to keep coming back to that. That we exist every day, we survive every day, we live and breathe and have our being because of Him. And, when our hearts are overwhelmed, we can go to that rock. And, we've had not only a couple of years of feeling overwhelmed, we have a human history of sin and pain and injustice. And so as believers, I think our challenge every single day is back to your scripture there, Van. What kind of people are we going to be? If I could just kind of bookend our conversation in that's our challenge, I think, no matter what we're dealing with, whether it's personal, physical, questions about, is this the end of my time here? Or the things that come from without, of our lives, outside our lives.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of person are we going to be? What will people say about us when we're gone? I've sat in so many funerals, especially here in Springfield, because there's just all these amazing old saints of God that die and have had amazing lives. You go and you sit at their funerals and you're like, wow, nobody would ever say that about me. Like things like, I never heard him say a harsh word, or things like that, like, well, they definitely wouldn't hear that, about me. But, I do think about that. What is our legacy? So I think of, I look at these things and I think of heritage and legacy. What have we received in our life? What have we inherited? What have we been given? What have we been made responsible to be stewards for? And what are we leaving? I'm in the process right now of going through my house and, books and papers and things. I mean, we've lived in Springfield in this house longer than I've lived anywhere, right? So 19 years next month. And I'm not a hoarder. I've gone through a lot of things during those 19 years, but now I'm going through them with the thought of, I've carried this around for 40 years. Do I want to carry it around for the last 30, kind of thing? So I'm thinking about the legacy, what kind of legacy am I leaving? And we have this challenge, not only within our families, but in our ministries and in the world. And, that's the challenge I think we face every day, but we don't face it without help and without hope. He's given us everything we need, for life and godliness and to be like Him. We have it. We just, we have the mind of Christ. We just need to use it.
Yes.
Right.
Amen.
And we have the Spirit. We just have to let Him empower us. We have the body of Christ, but we need to engage with one another. We have opportunities in life to leave an important legacy, but we have to, overcome our fears or overcome our feelings of inadequacy or insecurity, or, oh, it doesn't matter anyhow. I'm working on a small volume right now for our Sunday school class, Christmas volume, and everybody in the class is giving a piece, and I'm editing it and putting this little book together. And I told Doug last night, I said, I don't know. I just, I'm editing it. I'm fine with doing that, but I just can't think of anything to write for my own, contribution. And he says, oh, well, you need to write about that time you delivered a refugee baby. And I'm like, well, that was interesting. And so you think sometimes that, oh, what does it matter? What do people care? But that mattered in that moment that I was there to catch that baby, that mattered. And it wasn't breathing when it came out. So my sticking my fingers in its nose and its mouth and, giving it some massage and all that. She's got a life now. So, no matter what we do, we just need to be faithful with whatever God's put in front of us. Whatever your hand finds to do it with all your might. And it may be different at different times of your life. Right now, Van, you're doing this fellowship at Carson, and you guys are engaged in certain things. Who knows what we'll be doing in 10 years? I didn't know even 3 years ago that I'd be doing what I'm doing now. And I can't even imagine in 3 more years, like, well, what am I going to be doing? So, just staying in that yoke next to Christ, when the yoke he invites us to. Yes. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light, and I just keep coming back to that. Like, that's where I want to be. I want to be in that yoke because he invited me to be there. And if I'm there with him in that yoke, I don't have to worry, which field I'm going on or which direction I'm turning, because I'm with him.
Yes. Amen. Well, I agree with you. And, I was going to share this a little earlier, but Rob, thinking of Martin Luther, King, Dr. King Jr., like Dietrich, he was very young also when he began, 26 years old, I guess, and started his ministry, which he did not plan. But I was told that everywhere Martin traveled, he had a book with him by Howard Thurman called The Disinherited Jesus. And I purchased that about a few months ago. Well, I've had it a couple of years. But anyhow, in the book, getting to what you said, Lois, in this book by Howard Thurman, who was Martin Luther King Jr.'s mentor, and he went everywhere. He took that book with him everywhere he traveled. In the book, he outlines how that with the birth of Jesus, the one whom we serve, that number one, he was born Jewish. And that really may not sound like much, but today everybody's trying to steal the ethnicity of Jesus. And it is important that we understand he was born Jewish. Number two, he was born into a poor family. I mean, a poor family, because Mary offered turtle doves at his dedication. That was a poor man's offering to the Lord, not a lamb, turtle doves. But number three, he was born in a minority community in the Roman Empire, a minority community. And then what we might call today the ghetto. So, when I think of all that, then there were different reactions. The Pharisees, the Sadducees, they tried to assimilate with the Romans, and they were kind of like the high class Jews. And the Pharisees were thought of the Romans as very contemptible, and they didn't say anything to them, but they really didn't like them. And then you had the Zealots who fought against the Roman Empire. But the key is everybody had to decide how they're going to respond to the Roman Empire of oppression. And yet Jesus was born into it. And he never became a Roman citizen. And it's what you said, Lois. It is in that context that his solution to the problem was the kingdom of God is in you. It's in you. Therefore, come to me, all ye that are laden heavy, and I will give you rest for your souls. If you take my yoke on you, you'll find rest. So we really have to keep this spiritual attachment to Yeshua, who understands our plight. I mean, he really can identify because he chose to be born into that scenario. That was his choice. And he chose it because he loves us. So he identifies with us for sure. And yet, as we look at the scenes going on in the world today, if we just look at the news, if we just look at the scene, we will be disheveled. But if we keep, as you said, Lois, if we keep coming back to Yeshua, then that's where we find rest for our souls, because the meta-narrative, the great story of Jesus, is the one that is transcendent and going to prevail throughout time and in the end. And so I'm grateful that we can have our feet on the ground and our heads in the clouds, keeping our eyes on Jesus. So if somebody wants to make a closing comment.
as if I may, a little exegetical note here, or interpretive note. What you just alluded to about the birth of Jesus and his station in human social order. There is some critique of New Testament passages that are interpreted to be anti-Semitic. That some of the references to Jews appears to be pejorative or insulting or demeaning. And but if you go back to the original, and Lois would be the authority here, I think, with her scholarship on these matters, but when I would lead teaching tours of the Holy Land, I would often point out to the pilgrims that were with me, when you hear reference to the Jews in a negative context, that's a translation of Yehudim, Judahites, because the people of the South, of Judah, were very biased and prejudiced against the people of the North in Nazareth. It was the opposite of the problem we had here in the United States, of North feeling superior to the South. Well, in ancient Israel, Roman occupied Palestine, it was the opposite. The Southern Jews felt superior to the Northern Jews. They were more educated, they were urbanites, as compared to the Nazarenes, who were rural people and fishermen. They were uneducated, and that's why the question is there. Can anything good come out of Nazareth, the North? Are you kidding? Those uneducated bumpkins? And so, there was a class distinction there. So Jesus was not only born a Jew, he was born a socially and culturally inferior as far as perceptions go. The underclass. He was born of the uneducated underclass as compared to the elites in the South surrounding Jerusalem and so on. And it's really important to understand those things, because as we all know, context is everything. I had an instructor in seminary who used to say, any text, meaning scripture text, any text without a context becomes a pretext.
That's correct.
You have to have context in order to apply a sound hermeneutical analysis of a text. So anyway, that's just peripheral stuff, but it's very, very important, and the implications of it are enormous.
Very
Rob,
important.
I like your point, Rob, and I just want to say this right fast. That our time is almost out. It also puts me in mind of the day of Pentecost, when the crowd there took notice of them, that they were ignorant and unlearned men. And that's sort of like the same content that went on. And so I agree with you in terms of that analysis and what's saying. And remember, let's keep in mind that John writes almost 60 years after Jesus is born. And so he's kind of referring back and trying to get his ways to understand the Jews. So when he keeps using that term, the Jews, he's really kind of giving them context as to where all of this arrives. I know what you probably want to say something real fast along this before we close out. Yes, unmute yourself.
No, I'm good. I'm looking forward to Van giving the Aaronic blessing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say, we've just celebrated Reformation Day, and I'm thinking of Martin Luther, how he wrote a very sad book called All Jews Are Liars. I mean, the man that we give great praise to in the Reformation literally wrote a statement that also Hitler read his writings. A Christian. He read a Christian's writing, and that helped him fuel his anger against Jewish people, the Teutonics being the pure ones. But we've got a lot of hassles. But I come back to our premise, what are we grounded in? that we, as Peter says in 2 Peter 2:11 there, what manner of people ought we to be? It's the is ought kind of concept. Is ought. We are this, but should we be that? Is or ought, you know, or Martin Buber saying, I, it, I, thou, I, it, I, thou. We're for the others as well. And so I'm grateful. And Rob, I need you and I to talk after the show today if you get a chance. And I just wish everybody, Dennis and Lois and Alaine was not here today. Tom was not here today. Everybody else that's Sterling is in Kenya. He's in Africa right now as we speak. And
we had Alaine. She's just gone.
Yeah, she's gone. Sterling's in Africa and Kenya and ministering over there. But I think great days are ahead for us because we are the great eschaton community of the Lord Jesus Christ. And the best is yet to come when you think of his kingdom that we are. And he said, he's going to build his church, and the gates of hell, which he was standing right there. He was standing right there at Pan. The gates of hell shall not prevail because he's King of Kings and he's Lord of Lords. And so the battle will be worth it, even though Rob has sat in the seat of a martyr when he was in Oxford, and we won't take that prophetic, but nevertheless, I'm going to leave that to him. But I'll say that
I've often said I'm called to many things, but not martyrdom.
But I'm so glad to see all of you. We're entering into Thanksgiving and Christmas seasons and, celebrating the birth of our Lord and just good family time and where we cherish, as Lois said, it's a time where we cherish our time with each other. And life is a very precious thing. And all of you are precious to me. And I'm so grateful to God for every one of you. And I say the Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord Adonai Elohim lift up the light of his countenance upon each one and give you shalom in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God bless every last one of you.
Amen.